We've made 2 records in the past, and we've done some other projects on the side, and they've all been unique in a certain way. But this was completely different than anything we've done before. We went about the entire process completely backwards. For instance, we never went into the studio until we were, I'd say, 80% done with the songs. This process, we actually went into the studio about a year before the completion date.
Starting from at home on our individual rigs to bringing them into what we call the Korn studio, which is a space that Korn owns. We were there from January of '06 to the middle of '06, and then we moved everything to Laurel, which is really a house. You have to bring in all the gear.
It was a cool house as far as it being on the hill and having some of that history, but it's really worn down.
The first time we walked into the house, we knew some of the rumors that Houdini had lived there, that people had said it was haunted and whatnot.
My pants. Dude, I thought this was real. Dude, I thought that was a real dinosaur. For a second.
I mean, looking around in this studio, you know, this is a studio that we're at NRG right now. You know, you've got the board, you've got the nice room with the acoustic treatments on the walls. You know, everything is set up to sound as good as possible. We're used to recording in a room like this, but when we did the record with Rick, he immediately said, why don't we go to, you know, the Laurel Canyon house? It made a lot of the guys uncomfortable at first because they're like, I don't know, it's definitely not going to sound as good, for sure. There's no way it could. But there's also a certain feeling like when you're coming to a studio, you're at work. When you're at a house, you could be hanging out. And for the first, you know, month, we'd be screwing around a lot, like playing a lot of basketball and messing around. That's not to say that no work got done, but it is to say that there's an adjustment period.
In a studio, you don't really know what time of day it is. You lose track of the hours. You know, you go outside and you're surprised it's dark out. But in the house, you can actually see the day as it changes. And that was something that was helpful during the process. You know, watching cars driving by and all that. It felt like we were still part of society in a way, rather than being closed in this environment where you don't really know what's going on in the outside world.
Unlike a traditional studio where you've got really one room to work in, we had, I think we either called it A or 1, which was the first floor, and that was the main tracking room. The control room was set up in what used to be like a library, and then the tracking took place in what probably would have been like the living room. And then on 2, we had all our electronic gear set up. So if we wanted to mess with a Mellotron or, you know, an old Moog keyboard or weird synthesizers and drum machines, 808s, that's where we could do that work simultaneously. And then at the end of the process, we also had a rig up on 3 where the vocals are being cut.
I'm going to leave a little present in here for Ethan, and then I'm going to go outside. I multitask. I don't eat pizza and Pringles, I eat pizza Pringles.
So we're on our way over to the studio. I probably go over to the studio almost every day. I have a few more days of recording to do. Joe's actually in right now working with Andrew, our engineer. So I'm kind of like getting in where I fit in around his schedule.
There was a lot of freedom. You know, it wasn't one room dedicated to like only one person being able to record at a certain time. We had tons of equipment around, and you could just come in at any time and record. So like, I would just basically start running all the sounds into different amps in different rooms.
There's always so much going on within a song, so a lot of times after working in the studio, I would go back to my practice room and work on some of the parts that I knew I was going to record the next day. So now I'm on my way over to my drum studio. I go back and forth a lot from the Laurel studio to my drum room. There's actually times when I'm working in the studio, and I'll hit a point where I know that I just need to stop working on the actual recording process and go back to practicing and writing. I've been to the studio probably hundreds of times in the last year. Evil Idea was done at Laurel. This song was written at the Laurel studio, and I actually worked on the drums with Mike there. As Mike was sitting in the control room, I was sitting at my kit, and we were just coming up with different ideas together. So I've been through this song now, and we've decided that this is the drum part for Evil Idea. So at this point, I'm just practicing this. We have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and the songs tend to change a lot. So I'm sure that when I get to the studio to track Evil Idea, there will be some changes that I haven't practiced yet.
We're going to do a whole nother take, but I think just there's something interesting about the thing you almost played, so we want to get that on the end of that take.
Okay, so it's just going to be a Tom lead-in to the...
Yeah.
The songs were constantly changing, and whenever anybody was inspired to do something, they kind of just went and did it. You could throw an idea out there and it doesn't work, then we just revert back to the version before. This concludes the drum session day, and now I'm off to Laurel for a band meeting.
We're here at Laurel today working on 2 songs, Patience and Ebo Idea, and we're playing them live as a band to see if that result is better than the versions we have already in the computer, which were mainly tracked individually.
We sat down and kind of put Rob in a section, me in a section, Brad in a section, and then most hilarious of it all is Mike and Chester in their own little vocal booths. Chester's being like completely enclosed and probably only 6.5 feet tall, so it's kind of really low like ceiling, and extremely hot and muggy. So we'd all be playing, and Chester's in there completely naked, just sweating and disgusting.
What?
What are you doing in there, dude?
Partying.
Toasty in there?
It's partying in there.
Sauna in there, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know why you kept those on.
I was thinking about taking them off, but I didn't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
The mentality that Rick brings is he'll try anything. And so if someone gets an idea when you're listening to something, I know if you're working on a guitar part, it doesn't sound right, let's try and play it on a piano, let's try and play it on a banjo, let's try and play it on anything.
We're literally at this point trying everything. After I finish this, I'm going to have to go through and replay all these options with my fingers. And after I finish that, I'm going to have to go through and replay all the options with my teeth.